Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of History Hangout with the Shippensburg Historical Society. Again, my name is John Miller. I'm the executive director here at the Society. So, one of the things that I would like to do with History Hangout is where we kind of explore different aspects of culture using documented sources, mainly photographs, or if you go back to the colonial period, looking at some of the portraits that were done by artists. And today I thought we'd do an exciting, just a brief talk on some of the occupational photographs of the mid to late 1800s when photography pretty much came out and became very popular and so on and so forth. So one of the things that I like to talk about with this is basically just the general popular types of occupation that is out there, such as the seamstress. And a lot of times when we're looking at photographs, people are always asking, well, how do you know what their occupation is? And sometimes you got to look at the actual photograph because, again, that old saying that I grew up with, a photograph is worth 1,000 words. And here we're going to go ahead and examine some of the photographs for that. So a seamstress obviously is somebody who sews fabrics together in order to make some type of a product, whether it be clothing. And in this case, that's what these ladies here are pretty much representing. And the sewing machine was introduced to the world in the mid 1700s, but here in North America with the United States, it didn't gain popularity until about the mid 1840s, going into the 1850s, and then after the American Civil War, the sewing machine pretty much becomes a standard household item. So we have these three ladies here who are proudly posing for their portraits with the sewing machine. And then other types of occupations, we would have like different mechanical things. Whether, like this individual here, you can see he's holding a pair of calipers with something there in his left hand. I can't make what it is. But you also have this gentleman here who's also using a clamp to put something together. So these guys here, they're pretty much dressed as mechanics. Again, if you followed the previous video where I talk about the clothing of different occupations, you're not going to wear your good dress clothes on the trade unless you're a banker or some type of a clerk. Here you can see we have basically an apron that goes all the way up to protect his shirt and waistcoat. Same way with this guy here. And he also has pretty much what's known as a mechanic's hat. But then you have other occupations such as a locksmith. And here we can actually see where this gentleman here is working on a lock. He's also got his little hammer there. And this gentleman here also is holding a lock from an interior door. And again, you can kind of see how they're dressed. Some of them dress pretty much because of the fact that this may be the first time they're getting a portrait done. Or in this case, this gentleman here decided to go ahead and wear what it is that he would normally wear every day on his job. And then here we have a tinsmith, and you can kind of see some of the tools in their hands as well as one of the products there. And every town basically had some type of locksmith or a tinsmith. And tinsmith, they're the ones that made items made out of tin, such as maybe coffee pots, cups, plates. Tin was very cheap, it's durable, and if you take care of it the right way, it would last for a long time. The main thing is trying to keep it from rusting. Here we have shoe repair, and here this gentleman here, he's got his entire setup kind of showing you the tools of the trade from the hammer in his hand. I like this one here because this is pretty much an entire shop, and it shows you the layout of all the tools as well as possibly the apprentice right there. And then here, this is going more into the late 1800s, but here we have a heavy-duty sewing machine to kind of show you from the transition period from putting shoes together by hand to the usage of a machine. Mining and different iron workers were also important because of the fact that we needed the iron in order to create different metals, but we needed miners to extract those minerals, whether it be for coal or iron ore or even copper and other such precious metals. So I definitely love this photograph here. This is going into the later 1800s, but he has his shovel as well as his lunch pail. And again, you can see he's wearing overalls to kind of protect his clothing. Here we have an iron worker with all kinds of tools of his trade right here. And the same way with this gentleman right here. And this is just a great example, again, of the overalls. And you can kind of see he basically has some type of a headdress on. It's not a fancy slouch hat or anything like that. It's basically, it's his cap. And same way with this gentleman here, has his mechanic's cap sitting right there. And the really great thing I love about these photographs is the material culture that you see inside of, from whatever the metal is that's here, but you also see gears and such down through there. Blacksmithing is very important, whether it would be to make, you know, the rims for wheels, or in this case a farrier for like horseshoes and such. Blacksmith were pretty much the backbone of pretty much any community. Here in Shippensburg we had several blacksmith shops. But I love these photographs because you can kind of see the tools of their trade, from the farrier right here to the blacksmith. Again, this guy here is pretty much a farrier as well, but you need those blacksmithing skills in order to make horseshoes. But then you also have another gentleman that is right here too. And the thing that I love is the different shapes of the anvils that you see between these two photographs, as well as the tools that you can clearly see. Butcher, obviously another important occupation for any community when you're trying to provide fresh meat, whether it be cattle, you know, such as beef or lamb, even hog or even poultry. And supplying fresh meat was very important. And I love these occupational photographs here because you definitely see the knife sharpener here with the knife. They're dressed in their aprons to protect their clothing from, you know, the animal particles such as blood or even some of the fats that come off of them. This guy here has got a saw for cutting, you know, through very thick bones, maybe such as the hindquarters or the shoulders. He also has his knife right here, as well as his cleaver there. And again, you can kind of see where he's protecting his clothing with an apron. Same way with this gentleman here. You know, he's got his knife sharpener as well as his knife right there. Just very interesting to take time to look at these photographs, because nowadays, when you think of occupational photographs, there's not a whole lot out there except for whatever you would take on your digital camera. Tailors were very important within the community, just as much as seamstresses were. And of course, tailors, you know, they pretty much made the clothing, or perhaps they made other kind of goods out of cloth. And I love this because it also shows you tools of the trade, from the ironing, the iron to the ironing board. I love his pipe right there, by the way. Iron. And of course, this guy here has his shears laid on top of some fabric. And again, since these gentlemen here aren't doing anything that's going to cause a lot of dirt and grime to get on their clothing, this is pretty much how they would have dressed. You know, the laundress, a lot of this falls into the department of, like, you know, house servants, but there are also businesses out there that require to have a laundress. And I love this because it shows you, you know, some of the earliest washing machines, to this lady here with the bucket. And of course, they would have those scrubs that would go down, as well as this lady right here. So very interesting to take a look at the laundress as well as some of the house servants. Farming, very important. Without the farmers, you wouldn't have cattle. Without farmers, you wouldn't have the food. And of course, farming is not an easy chore to do. So we have 3 photographs here of gentlemen who are farmers, and you can kind of see they're a little, dirty. This guy here, basically, because of the fact that he works out in the field, he's not going to have his waistcoat on, so it's perfectly acceptable to have his regular shirt with a slouch hat to protect his shoulders, or the wearer's shoulders, from the elements of sun. You have this gentleman here, and he's got his apron too, but also he has his tool right there for cutting. Same way with this gentleman here. Carpenter. I love how the carpenters were very proud of their trades back then. As you can see, he has all of his tools being held onto an object in his hand stretched across his back. Masons were very important at the time, for brickwork. Mail couriers, if you want mail delivered. Again, I decided to go ahead and add a couple more photographs of the carpenter because I love how they decorate themselves for their portraits, from this guy here to this gentleman here. And look at all the tools, from the square. Here we have calibers of some sort. Looks like we have a hatchet, a saw, a plane. Same way, we have a saw, a plane. Here we have what appears to be a compass of some sort. And here, really not much is shown, but this gentleman here on the end has his hammer, which is a good indication that he perhaps is a carpenter. Miscellaneous occupational photographs are always great to look at, whether you're working and basically cutting up ice blocks, which is what these gentlemen here are, and they have rubberized or waterproofing as far as protecting their clothing. And of course, they're holding tools of the trade. Chimney sweepers. Plumbing. So we did have plumbers going into the late 1800s. We have a saddle maker. Perhaps maybe a shopkeeper. Bartender. And then over here, we have, starting out, the doctor, a dentist, and somebody who basically would paint or whitewash, buildings. So all these are very important. When I talk about research, one of the things that I always do is I look for documentation as far as like actual text, letters. But from there, I will actually look at the actual photographs to see, because if they mention, for an example, we had a painter come in here today, well, I want to know what the painter had, maybe what he looked like. So photographs definitely help to answer a lot of questions regarding material culture, and that definitely helps to build the meat to maybe you're writing an essay, to maybe you're writing an article, whatever the case is. When you have documentation, always take a look at the photographs. I hope you enjoyed this edition of History Hangout with the Shippensburg Historical Society. And until then, stay safe.